Present, I'm Meredith Rentz-Cook. I'm the presiding officer. Brenda Buffington. Here. Janet Dermeyer.
Here.
Laurie Fremgen.
Here.
Charlotta Guillory.
Here.
Linda Hart is absent at this time, correct? Victoria Meinhardt.
Here.
Helen Nelson.
Here.
Michael Nix.
Here.
All right. And I do certify that this is a quorum present. All right. Do we have any other introductions that we'd like?
If you'd like us to, we can. Yes, ma'am.
If you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Certainly, I'll start. George Ferry, Director of the Compliance Division, and I'll be representing the Executive Office today.
Mary Winston, I'm the attorney for the Office of Strategic Communication, and I am the attorney with the Advisory Board Support Team.
Hi, I'm Wendy Pello, Assistant General Counsel. I'm filling in for Lynn Latome, who is the attorney assigned to this program.
I am Tamala Fletcher. I'm the Executive Assistant and Advisory Board Coordinator.
Thank you for your attendance and support. All right, our next order of business is the approval of minutes from our February 9th meeting. We'd like to review those.
I have a remark on a piece of that that is no longer valid. The first paragraph stating that Dr. Michael Nix can never attend a meeting on Tuesday, that is no longer valid. My work structure has changed.
All right.
Duly noted, Dr. Nix.
Never is a strong word.
So absolutely. I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So passed. All right, our next item is public comment. And I have one public comment without a topic listed. Carol Schumacher.
I prefer to firm up comments to just before the end of the meeting if possible.
This is when we're having public comment for this meeting. This is on the agenda.
Wait, Meredith, you can change the agenda.
I'm electing to do public comments as written. Just, would you like to offer a public comment or?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, moving forward. Were there any other forms that I missed?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. Our next order is staff reports. The executive office, Ms. George.
All right. As promised, I'm George Ferry, the Director of the Compliance Division, and I'll be representing the Executive Office today, making their staff report. First of all, I want to let you know that Mr. Kuntz and Mr. Francis both would like to be here, and we're planning on being here, but had another event. We're actually doing a very special event for Mr. Kuntz over at the Capitol today. So as I think you all know, but I'll go ahead and remind you that Bill Kuntz, our Executive Director, is retiring at the end of this month. Something we're all a little, sad, happy for him, sad for us. Bill's been here since 1999, and Bill and Brian together as the executive team have really turned this agency around from the conditions that were here when they started in '99. So they're great leaders, both of them. Mr. Kuntz will be missed, but we understand he's promising to stop in to visit from time to time. So we expect to see him. And I'll go ahead and finish this item by letting you know that Brian Francis has been appointed by our commission as to take the place of Mr. Kuntz as executive director starting September 1. So Bill and Brian think alike in many ways. So I don't think you're going to see a substantial difference in the philosophy and the way things operate around here, and the service that we provide certainly will remain the same because we have the same people in many of the positions and many of the divisions here providing that service. So big change, though, big change for us. I want to start with the an update on the transition of the programs from DSHS to TDLR. First of all, the most important thing is October 3rd, will be the official date when all the responsibilities and duties and processes and procedures and everything transfer from DSHS to TDLR. So come October 3rd, when you call your licensing board, it will be TDLR. If you get a license, it will have TDLR on it. If you have questions, call TDLR. So all that happens on October 3rd. We're working very hard to make sure that is as seamless as possible. And in fact, I'll mention that we have formed a consolidation team within the agency made up of members of all the different divisions that is looking at everything that's required to make this happen, making sure that we've thought of everything, hoping we thought of everything. And that team is meeting once a week from now until October 3rd, and will continue to meet afterwards too, to address any items that come up, any items that, oops, we didn't think of that. But the way, with the people we have working on that team, I think we're going to be in good shape come October 3rd. And it should be a seamless transition. As a part of that, of course, we have ongoing, this group has already reviewed rules and reformatted them, and those have been adopted. We've also put a rule proposal out there right now that is of a general nature as far as the health-related programs go. It has to do with some changes to our law, the overarching law for the whole agency, our Chapter 51. And it deals primarily with, well, I won't wing this one. I think I'll get my cheat notes out here. So it's part of Senate Bill 202, the bill that made all these changes happen. There is some provision that speaks to how we adopt rules that relate to scope of practice and standards of care. That requires that any rules on those subjects that this board or any other health-related boards put out there for our commission, the commission must either adopt or send them back to, if they want to change something, they have to send them back to the advisory board for the advisory board to reconsider address their concerns, shall we say. That was published in the Texas Register on August 12th and will be out there for 30 days. This is something we didn't bring to the board because it's of a general nature, but as members of the public and as members of the profession that are impacted by this, I strongly suggest you go to our website and look at it. It's on the home page for each of the professions. And just read through the rules so you kind of have an understanding of what we're proposing. You can certainly provide public comments as part of this process and recommend any changes or ask any questions that you want to about these proposed rules. So now I'm going to defer to Mary here on this next item. It's a staff presentation to industry. So,
Good afternoon, Mary Winston again. I had to look up the date, but I remembered it was in May. May 7th is when Brian Francis, myself, and Charlotte Melder attended the Texas Association of Texas Midwives meeting in Navasota. Brian and I provided an update on the transition and some of the things that would be going on administratively from the executive office, and Charlotte provided a wonderful discussion and presentation on enforcement. Wave, Charlotte. How enforcement is going to, let's just say, grow and develop versus just saying change, because it's a development of change. We stuck around. We had a great lunch. Janet is fabulous and played hostess with the mostest, and it was a time for us to share with you, and we also learned a whole bunch from our visit. So we look forward to attending other industry events and presenting information as well as learning, and that's part of what we here at TDLR provide. George and I were just this Saturday in San Antonio at another meeting providing information for presentation from another DSHS board program that's come this way. So you'll be seeing a lot more of us out and about, as well as when you come here.
Thank you, Mary. And by the way, if you all feel like you're coming down with a fever, it's not you. We have a little issue with the air conditioning in here. Sorry, we're working on it. In the meantime, if you want to use your agenda to fan yourself, hopefully that'll help some. So to continue on the staff report, Next two items I'll kind of do together. So the strategic plan, our strategic plan, and our legislative appropriations request. And first, the strategic plan is every state agency every 2 years has to do a strategic plan. And we are given specific instructions from what must be included, but we kind of go above and beyond that. We do take it seriously. It's a plan for the years 2017, well, next 5 years, basically, next 5 fiscal years. And we put a lot of time into this in developing what we want to do over those next 5 years, and part of that process is going out and talking to licensees. Some of y'all may have gotten the invitations back in the spring when we did the sessions around the state. But we asked 4 questions. What are we doing well? What can we do better? If you could be king or queen for a day, what would you change, particularly in law and rule? And then what's coming down the pike in the next 5 years? You know, not just technology, but what do you see changing maybe in your profession, or what do you see happening that would somehow impact your profession? So we take those comments and we come back and we sort through the hundreds of comments. We also ask the same questions online too, to get as much input as possible, and look for ways to provide, number one, the services that people really need and really want, and try to identify impediments maybe in the law or something like that that are unnecessary and just cause problems for the licensees, and make licensing with TDLR would make it more difficult. We then put together a strategic plan, which can be found on our website. If you go to our homepage under the reports, you'll find the 2017 to 2022 strategic plan. Another exercise we have to go through is our legislative appropriations request, which some refer to as the professional groveling document. So we put out there what we need to operate the agency to the legislature. It is evaluated. All agencies have to go through the appropriations committee and evaluate their request. That is completed but may not yet be on our website. You will see it though here soon. So if you want to get down into the numbers, you're welcome to, but you can look at that document online. The only other item, well, I already talked about Mr. Kuntz retiring, so I addressed the personnel updates. I'll have one more personnel update during Compliance Division report, but I'll end the executive office with repeating because Mr. Francis emphasized this to me, that he really apologizes for not being able to be here today. He really wanted to be here for y'all. But you'll see him in the future, so this is not you're not missing the only opportunity, anything like that. So anyway, y'all have any questions on the executive office staff report? Thank you all very much.
And next is the General Counsel Division staff report.
Right. Good afternoon. Wendy Pello, Assistant General Counsel. We wanted to provide you a brief update on the adopted new rules at 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 115, the Midwives. And these are the new TDLR rules. Just as a refresher, at your last advisory board meeting back in February, the proposed rules were brought before the advisory board along with all the public comments that had been submitted during the public comment period. The advisory board reviewed the proposed rules, the public comments, and had made a recommendation to the commission that the commission approve the proposed rules with the changes based on the public comments that you all had received. Since your last meeting, the commission adopted those proposed rules at its meeting on April 13th, 2016, and the adoption notices were published in the Texas Register on June 17th, 2016. The rules are also posted on our website under the Midwives program homepage. And while those, just as a reminder, those rules don't take effect until October 1st, 2016, with the program, all the regulatory functions starting October 3rd. But we want to make sure they're out there on the website so folks can start reviewing them and becoming familiar with them before the rules become effective and before the programs transfer. So we just wanted to bring you up to date on the status of those rules. And that concludes the General Counsel report. Do you have any questions?
Is there a document or some sort of description of the changes, what changes or modifications of rules existed between the previous midwifery board and the new midwifery advisory board?
There is a summary that's in the preamble of the proposed rules, and that's also posted on our website explaining each of the sections. I'm trying to think if back when they did the proposed rules for this board, they had shown kind of, we had put together a document, I think, for all of the DSHS rules in terms of this, it was formerly the DSH rule, whatever the number was, and then where it moved to. I don't believe that's posted on our website, but if that's something Vice Board members like, we could send that to you. I believe that was probably part of the original proposal when we had the meetings back in November, those first round of meetings.
Other questions? Moving on to
And
compliance.
Madam Chair, I might just add to it, Dr. Nix, I don't know if you know that the process we went through was primarily reorganizing them, not really making substantive changes to the rules. So, yes, you may not know where to find things right away, but we put it in a format that we use for all our other programs to make it easier for our folks to find stuff, and hopefully y'all will find it fairly self-explanatory too. So.
Were there any substantive changes?
That I
I
can't speak
don't-
to because I'm filling in.
I don't think we
for
made
Lynn.
those changes. That's when we decided to form the work groups to then go back and make the changes
Right.
in the rules.
The primary
Yeah.
purpose for both this advisory board and the other advisory boards and the programs that we're moving over from DSHS to TDLR, our main goal was to get the programs transferred. So the purpose really was to streamline, reformat, take out any provisions that were duplicative, because we have a Chapter 51, our Occupations Code Chapter 51, and our Chapter 60 rules, 16 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 60. Those rules are procedural rules that apply to all of our programs. So if we had those same provisions in those rules, we took them out of the specific program rules. And then any changes that, if the statute, because the statute also changed as part of Senate Bill 202, that we removed rules that related to any statutory changes. But for the most part, we tried not to make too many substantive changes, so it wasn't disruptive to the programs when they moved over.
Mary Winston, Dr. Nix, we specifically, as Laurie has just said, we developed these work groups. Our general counsel's office organized the rules, took out duplicative information. There's a method at TDLR of listing the definitions in one section, standard of care in one section. So there was a reorganization, but things like standard of care, we left alone until the work groups could get to it, i.e. after the program comes aboard in October. So for those work groups who haven't met, the work will now start to begin, but nothing substantively, that wasn't our intent. It was just to line it up so we can get a clean plate, so to speak, to work with.
Yeah, I think we also cleaned up the language on a couple of the sections too.
Cleaned
Like
up the language.
Yeah, like the retired midwife
Yes.
section was very confusing.
Things like that, Dr.
Yeah.
Nix, that's procedural, and of course we had to change DSHS to TDLR
Yeah.
and things like that. And let's see, which work group, you're on a couple of work groups here, so if you don't already know, your work is about to
Yeah.
begin.
Other duties is assigned.
Yes.
We assigned you.
Oh, I saw that. You know, that didn't happen to slip by.
All right, any further questions on the General Counsel Division?
This is Charlita Guillory. Once the rules, this is a legal question, once the rules are adopted, you can still go back and change them? That was my, I'm
Yes,
trying
I
to
mean, once they're
understand.
adopted, but we can't make any changes until they become effective. So right now, we couldn't be making changes, but once October 1st comes, then we are able to propose new
You
changes.
can go back and change.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Moving on to Compliance Division.
Madam Chair, I'm going to start the compliance by introducing the gentleman who's sitting patiently waiting here at the table. So as part of the bringing over the programs, we created a new section in the Compliance Division, which is the easy for me to say, Health Professions Division. And as part of that, I hired a manager for that section, who you see sitting before you now. Stephen Mills has got over 20 years experience at DSHS, working with professional licensing. He is the manager of the section in the compliance division that will provide the, let's say, subject matter expertise, in-house subject matter expertise for these programs, and I'll answer a lot of the questions. I'm going to turn it over to him and let him make the rest of the compliance report, but I just wanted to let y'all know and welcome Stephen here. He's been here, actually he's been here since June 15th, so.
Thank you, George.
Yes, sir.
It's nice to meet y'all. I am Stephen Mills, the Health Professions Section Manager, formerly with the Department of State Health Services. Have worked for a number of years with all of the programs in the professional licensing unit. It was a total of 24, one of which was the Texas Midwifery Board. Have worked closely over the years with the former midwifery program director, and she has continually kept me in the loop on midwifery issues and concerns. So even though you may not have seen me as much over the years as perhaps you have seen the program director, I have been in the background and have been informed of a lot of issues. So I really look forward to working with y'all and to working with all of the 7 programs transferring to TDLR on October 3rd. We have been working on several major projects. One of them has been hiring. So we have, I have a total of 5 team members. I'll be filling those positions. 2 of them are our senior health professions program specialists, and those were just filled this week. And I'm proud to announce that Yvonne Feinleib is one of those senior program specialists. Yvonne is here today.
We were very happy about that.
We are very happy about that too, trust me. And the second senior health professions program specialist is Katie Bryce, who you may not know, but she has formerly been serving as the executive director for the Speech Pathologists and Audiologists Board and the Hearing Instrument Dispensers Board, also at DSHS. So we are committed to bringing over specific DSHS expertise to assist with this transition. The other 3 positions, those postings have closed, and we will be working on the interview and selection process. Yvonne will begin with us on September 1st. The other 3 positions will begin on October 1st. So the only other thing that I would talk about, George has already talked about a bit, is our TDLR Health Professions Consolidation Team. I had been asked to take the lead on that group and bring folks together on a weekly basis to brainstorm, to plan, to identify and address gaps, to share information and ideas, and to work on specific tasks to get us ready to go on day 1, which is 10/3. So it's been a great experience. We've been meeting for several weeks now. We have representatives from all of our functional areas coming together and doing those things I described. That includes IT, licensing, customer service, education and exams, compliance, financial services, web and social media, strategic communications, and our general counsel. So we've got the lines of communication wide open. We're also bringing in DSHS representatives every week because as we're ramping up, they're winding down. And it's very important that we're sort of on the same page as we go through the process. One of the major things we're working on right now is FAQs and web content to inform people of what's going on. We just now are really at the point where we have answers to many of the questions. DSHS has been making decisions on their wind down. That's going to inform our ramp up. So that's one of the major things we're working on. And I think the other areas will probably update you on their activities to get ready for the program transfers. That concludes my first report to this advisory board. Do you have any questions for me? Okay.
We had one, Yvonne told us wonderful things about you, so we're looking forward to working with you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Ray Pizarro. I'm the Director for the Education and Examination Division. Just to share a little quick story with you, I was in a workshop for the driver education. As you guys know, we're now regulating driver education program. And I asked that group, do you guys know who TDLR is? And this one lady stood up and says, yeah, you guys are regulating midwives. I'm like, you're doing your homework. Not yet, but we will in 46 days. Not counting, I'm not counting. So, 46 days. So,
Wow.
Before that train arrives, as you heard Mary, we're not changing anything, we're not making any changes, and I just want to reiterate that we are waiting for that train, and we're preparing ourselves, and we're looking at the laws and rules, we're looking at CE, we're looking at the JP exams, and we're going to get with the work groups, and we're going to make just general changes to the JP exam. For example, changing DSHS to TDLR, those kinds of things. We're not going to make any sudden drastic changes. If you go back and look at DES, at the driver education program, it's been last September when we got that program, and we are now in August, almost a year later, and we're just about to send out the proposed rules to put out. So it's a long process, and we've deleted over 10,000 words out of those rules just to try to plain talk things. So it's nothing we're going to do that is going to cause any harm or a direct impact. And I like to say we're not going to hit the beehive with the bat. So some of the other things that we've done so far in the E&E is we've hired a couple of new inspectors, and one in the Dallas region and the other one in the Fort Worth region. And those inspectors will be helping us with some of the school inspections. In your case, there'll be some inspections on the midwives schools. Tomorrow, I'll be going with my lead inspector. We're going to be attending the Midwife Education Committee in Georgetown. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. I don't know what it's going to be about, but I know I'm going.
Is that the ATM
I have no
meeting?
Is it
Oh,
ATM?
okay, okay.
Is that it's the education committee. So we'll be there. We're going to educate ourselves. That's what we've been doing since we've heard the program's coming over. We've been getting ready, educating ourselves, and learning on the do's and the don'ts. And I've been reading the laws and the rules diligently and trying to understand the different things and how you guys will fit in. So that's pretty much all I have. I don't have anything substantive to share with you, but if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have Enforcement Division.
Correct.
Hello, Charlotte Melder with the Enforcement Division. Normally, we don't come up and give a presentation if we don't have anything to say, but I thought I'd come up and say I don't have anything to say. We would traditionally in this section talk about what's going on in the Enforcement Division, what we've done, who we've talked to, major cases, that sort of thing. But since we don't have the program yet, we don't have anything. So the report you have is the same one that you got the last time, just talking about our procedures and how we do things. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
What you could report on, or is there a place to report on what the enforcement committee did, workforce did, or is that later?
That's later. It's on the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Dee Dee McEachern. I'm the director of the licensing division. And we have spent the summer at the Department of State Health Services hiring other people and learning how to process license applications using their procedures they already have established and everything else. So we have hired, I've hired a manager from there as well as 4 other people to help do things. So we'll have a good 5-person team in place. 2 of the folks have already started with us, and the other 3 will stay till October till we're ready to move everything over. But we are doing great. We're working on forms right now, just getting TDLR's information on them and getting ready to be posted in the middle of September. So everything else is going really well. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I know.
The next agenda item.
It's the criminal.
Okay.
I think, yeah. Oh, Yvonne's coming up? Oh, she's. Oh, there's seven.
Sorry, I was so busy thinking about being TDLR, I forgot I'm on the agenda as DSHS still. So,
It's a difficult transition, isn't it?
so some of this overlaps with what I talked to the Texas Midwifery Board about this morning, but since we have members who are not on it, I'm just going to repeat that our agency is working very diligently to complete the
Yvonne,
transition.
Remember, we all know who you are.
Oh,
but-
hi, I'm Yvonne Feinleib, and I'm still the DSHS Midwifery Program Director until September 1st, and then I'll be here in compliance. So we're working very diligently. Staff have been coming over from TDLR to learn. I'm providing a training to the TDLR customer service folks on the 24th on how to use our database when they're answering calls and dealing with email. So we have a lot of conversations going on, and as Stephen said, there's a transition team that's putting together all these pieces, and he's talked with me about the things that need to be in place by the transition by October 3rd, and the things that can be done after that date. And so there's a lot of planning going on going forward in the long term. So I'm really looking forward to having a place in that. I'm looking forward to going back to DSHS during the month of September as needed to help out if there are applications or complaint issues or whatever that I can go over and help and then come back here. I think everything is going smoothly. I'm not hearing any panic. I'm not hearing confusion. I'm hearing people just working away on things and communicating real well, coming to me if they have a question, coming to the licensing supervisor. You know, I think this is all going very smoothly. There's going to be a lot of boxes to be packed towards the end of the transition. The database is going to need to be locked around the middle of September, so we won't be able to process anything so the data can be transferred, and then everything will start up here at the beginning of October. But I think we're on track and things are going to be fine, and I would encourage anybody who is concerned, call me, email me. You know, don't panic, don't worry, get in communication, okay? Anything that you need from me?
Yvonne,
Sure.
I wanted to just ask about the regulation for education and examination committee that was spoke. Will anything change in terms of the midwifery school now that they will, is it an accreditation by them now? Is it different than what we're doing already?
The rules for education transferred over basically the same, okay? They dropped the exam sections where we had written proactively, just in case NARM went away, a section where we could approve an exam as the Texas Midwifery Board if we needed to use another exam. NARM is very stable. That language was very old and clunky, and they just dropped it completely. They have their own internal procedures if there were ever to be some kind of an emergency and we needed to find a different licensing exam. But right now, we don't need that section. There are 2 schools in Texas. There are no pending applications. One of them, the Association of Texas Midwives course, was just reapproved for another 3 years at the board meeting. And then the other one in El Paso is a nationally accredited school, so they have a slightly truncated reapproval process at renewal. 2 of the education exam section staff came to the ATM course site visit to see how we conducted it. Helen and I were talking about how we did what we did and why we did it as a training device for them, and they said it was very similar to the kinds of questions they asked during their education course site visits. So I anticipate a very smooth and level transition for that, unless you guys recommend some weird new rule, and then they'll have to implement it. Anything else? Okay.
just came up here and plonked down. Are you ready for the next agenda item?
We are ready for the next
All right.
agenda item.
That would be agenda
Yeah,
item
coming and
F.
plunking.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Christina Kaiser. I'm the Director of the Enforcement Division here at TDLR. For this agenda item, I believe it's item F, you have before you a draft of criminal conviction guidelines for the midwifery program. The criminal conviction guidelines are used by the agency when reviewing applicants for licensing to determine whether the applicant has a criminal history that may render them an unsuitable candidate for the license. I'll talk a little bit more about the agency's process of reviewing someone's criminal background in just a moment. The draft guidelines that are in front of you were developed by the enforcement work group members of this advisory board in consultation with agency staff as well as Yvonne from DSHS. The work group helped us to understand the settings in which midwives work, the types of clients that they serve, and the nature of their contact with their clients. We had some heavy conversations about what types of crimes should possibly be a basis for denying someone a license. That work group met in person here on March 7th. Up in the enforcement divisions area, and then we exchanged emails after that to finalize the document that's in front of you here today. The work group members from this advisory board are Brenda Buffington, Janet Dermeyer, and Meredith Rentz-Cook. Ultimately, at the end of this discussion today, we're going to be asking you to recommend approval of these criminal conviction guidelines by our commission. After the advisory board reviews them, if you recommend approval, then the next step is they will go to our commission at one of their public meetings for hopefully their approval. 4 sets of criminal conviction guidelines have already been approved by the commission for some of the other programs that are transferring to us from the Department of State Health Services. So if you want to get a sense of that, you could go back and look at those board meetings and those commission meetings. Just a little about the agency's process. Every individual who applies for a license with TDLR or who applies to renew a license they already have is subject to a criminal background check. The criminal background check is requested by our licensing division, the folks under Dee Dee McEachern who spoke to you earlier. They send the applicant's information over to DPS, and then we get the results back in batches. The licensing division does the first screening of people's criminal backgrounds with reference to these guidelines that we're hoping you will adopt today. And I want to stress to you that the guidelines are a starting point for the analysis. They are not the ending place of the analysis. If someone has a crime that is within these guidelines, if a conviction, let me stress that, a conviction, that is a flag to us to take a closer look at that person's entire criminal history. There are no crimes in your industry that are absolute drop dead. If you have this conviction, you absolutely don't get any license. This is very much of a case-by-case analysis. So, as I said, licensing does the first round of screening with reference to the criminal conviction guidelines. If they don't find any convictions that are cause for alarm, they will clear the person's criminal history and the application will move on in the process and enforcement never gets involved. If licensing does see convictions or information that indicates there may have been a conviction, because sometimes the histories are not complete, they will refer that matter over to enforcement, and then we will immediately do a second screening. We have 2 lawyers on staff who this is all they do, review people's criminal histories and make decisions about those. One of those is here in the room with us, Bob Rennick. He's probably horribly embarrassed that I've just called him out. So when a case or an application arrives in the enforcement division, we immediately screen it a second time just by looking at the history and the criminal conviction guidelines. We can, at that point, clear the person immediately and let their license application move on in the process. If we see something that we think may be a basis to deny somebody, then we will open a case for investigation. The attorney will give the investigator detailed instructions of what they want them to go get, which includes often certified copies of the court documents representing the conviction, Police records are sometimes requested. Reports from probation officers or parole officers are often requested. Interviews, of course, with the person who has applied for the license, and that sort of thing. So a full investigation is done of the person's background, and then the lawyer ultimately makes the decision if we're going to deny the person's license or not. There again, I want to stress that's still not the end of the process. If we seek to deny a person's license, we issue them a formal notice to that effect, and then that person has the right to a full array of due process after that. The person has a right to request a hearing, which would be held in front of the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and then ultimately that case would be brought before our commission for final decision. But then even after that, the person can still seek judicial review in district court if they want to continue to appeal the matter. So if you don't take anything else away from this part of the discussion, I want you to understand this, that there's no drop dead absolute. If you've got this conviction, you get no license. This is a very case-by-case discretionary type of review. And I can tell you that overall, the agency ultimately denies a very, very small fraction of all of the license applications that we receive. And we expect the same will be true in this industry as well. We're not looking to deny people's licenses. We seek to deny only when you see the worst of the worst types of criminal histories. So there are a couple of laws that give us the authority to do this. To deny or revoke somebody's license on the basis of their criminal history. The main one that we rely on and that will be applicable for your industry is Chapter 53 of the Occupations Code. And by the way, this is Chris Russey over here. He is the Research and Analytics Specialist for the Enforcement Division, and he did most of the major work on actually putting this document together that you have in front of you. And he is going to pull up stuff on the board. If you need to look at anything that I'm talking about, whether it's out of Chapter 53 or whatever, let me know, and Chris can pull that up and show it to you. As I said, Chapter 53 of the Occupations Code is the law that gives us our main authority to deny or revoke licenses because of someone's criminal history. The section in there that's the most often relied upon is Section 53.021A of the statute, which says the agency may suspend, revoke, or deny a license to a person who has been convicted of. And then underneath there are four different categories of stuff listed. Category number 1 is the most important one. Crimes that directly relate to the duties and responsibilities of the licensed occupation. So what does that mean? Crimes that directly relate to the duties and duties and responsibilities of the licensed occupation. That's the whole point of why we're here today. Because the criminal conviction guidelines are our effort to state publicly to the world, to the industry, to potential people who want to enter the industry, these are the crimes that we think are directly related to this industry and could be a basis to deny someone a license in this industry. So that's why we're here. That is the provision that we most often rely on to seek to deny someone a license. Some of the other categories that are in Chapter 53 are categories that the legislature added to the statute over a period of years, and they're basically more specialized categories of things that the legislature felt were so bad that the agency could deny the license even without showing that that was directly related. An example would be crimes listed in Section 3G, Article 4212 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Those are the worst of the worst types of crimes, like murder, indecency with a child, aggravated sexual assault, aggravated robbery, etc. Well, guess what? Most of those are also going to be in our directly related list of stuff that we're showing in our criminal conviction guidelines. So there are those additional categories shown, but they really overlap a lot with the directly related analysis anyway. So we don't really see very often that we dip into those other categories without the directly related analysis. In your statute, Chapter 203 of the Occupations Code, there is also a provision that relates to denying or revoking somebody's license because of their criminal history. It's the specific section number is 203.404A3 in your statute. And it states that the agency may deny a license to a person who has been convicted of a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude or a felony. Well, so what does that mean? Moral turpitude is a very broad category. It has been widely and inconsistently interpreted by different courts over the years. So to me, that language doesn't really give you a lot of help. And I can tell you that having been at TDLR for a number of years, saying something as broad as that is not really consistent with the way TDLR wants to do business. It's because I said we want to give licenses to everybody that we possibly can. We want to deny licenses only for the worst of the worst. So any felony, that's way too broad. So even with interpreting the language that's in your statute, the criminal conviction guidelines are going to help to narrow the focus to the crimes that we really are wanting to be concerned about. So I hope that kind of makes sense. As I said, directly related, that's what these guidelines are for. There's a provision in Chapter 53, that first law that I talked about, that requires the agency to adopt criminal conviction guidelines. So just as a practical matter, that's another reason we're here today, because the law says we have to do this. So I'd like to just kind of walk through the draft. Are there any questions about any of that sort of procedural stuff before we get into the actual document itself? I know I'm talking a really long time. I want to give you the basics.
When someone applies for a license, they give consent to have a criminal background check, or is it automatic?
They don't have to consent to it. It's automatically. That's part of the deal.
Is it written that they know this?
Yes. It's part of the application process, and there's authority in the law that allows us to do it.
I haven't applied for a job in a long time.
Yeah. Good for you. So in the criminal conviction guidelines, the draft that you have in front of you, it's 4 pages long. It looks like this, except y'all's doesn't have all the color on it. You'll see that we've arranged the crimes into categories. We don't try to make an exhaustive list of every possible conviction that we might see, because from one jurisdiction to the next, and even sometimes from one court to the next within the same county, the crimes are described using different words. So if we tried to make an exhaustive list, that would be a fool's errand. So we figured out that we should just use categories of crimes. So you'll see that we've described them in terms of crimes against the person, such as homicide, kidnapping, and assault. Those 3 descriptors at the end, homicide, kidnapping, and assault, are simply examples. Those are not like the only crimes against the person that we are considering. So I hope you kind of get the idea. As you go through the guidelines, you'll see that there's a category, and then underneath each category there are a series of reasons listed. These are our effort to say to the world, these are the reasons why we think this crime is directly related to this occupation. And as you go through here, you're going to see a lot of redundancy, and it's it kind of makes sense, I guess, that the same reasons are applicable to multiple of these categories. So I'm going to try not to be terribly redundant as I go through these. The first 3 categories in this document, these all are sort of related to each other, so I'm going to talk about them together. Crimes against the person, such as homicide, kidnapping, and assault. Crimes involving prohibited sexual conduct, and crimes involving children as victims. These are all included in those categories that we said were the worst of the worst types of crimes that we probably can all agree we wouldn't want these kind of folks seeking a license. In the reasons under each one, you'll see that we've reflected a citation from the Midwives statute. We're citing that law that we talked about a moment ago that allows denial based on a conviction involving moral turpitude or a felony. It's probably pretty safe to assume that crimes in any of these categories would be considered crimes of moral turpitude. So, when we see language in your statute that gives us a hint at the types of crimes we should be looking for, we definitely want to reflect that in the guidelines as one of the reasons why we think this category is important. Other reasons listed are someone with this type of criminal history would pose a danger to the clients. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like a duh kind of statement, but that is kind of the point of this, is to make those kind of statements. So you'll see that danger to the clients reflected in almost all of these categories. Similarly, the very last one, that this occupation provides persons the opportunity to engage in further similar conduct. That's another concept that you're going to see repeated in almost all of these categories. So for crimes against the person, crimes involving the prohibited sexual conduct, and crimes involving children as victims, we've also included a reason, and it's number 3 under each one of those, that the occupation involves physical contact with the clients and their family members in residences and private settings. And so there, you know, the discussion of the setting where the midwife does her business with her clients, that provides sort of a unique opportunity for those types of crimes to take place. Under the other 2 categories, the sexual conduct and the children as victims, we've added the concept of children in there, that private setting includes contact with children. And we had a discussion at the work group about how sometimes in the setting where you guys work, that the children will sometimes be unsupervised, and the midwife may have contact with them when there's no adult present. And so, you know, there's a potential there. The next 2 categories, I think, are kind of related: crimes against property, such as theft or burglary, and then crimes involving fraud or deceptive trade practices. There again, we've cited the provision from your statute about the moral turpitude or a felony. We've also talked under those categories about, in addition to just posing a general danger to the clients, we've also added here the concept of, you know, someone with this type of criminal history could pose a risk to the property of their clients, which they also have access to in an unsupervised setting. So under the fraud, we talked about this category for a long time in the work groups. We talked about some of the things that midwives are involved in, like the filing of birth certificates, for example, and that this occupation presents an opportunity to engage in fraud in that type of stuff. We also, number 7, under the category of fraud, the occupation provides persons with this type of criminal history the opportunity to engage in further similar conduct, potentially including healthcare fraud, insurance fraud, and citizenship fraud. So those are the kind of things that the work group was very helpful in informing us about what do folks have their hands on, what could they potentially do while practicing this profession. And then you'll also see under the fraud that under reason number 2, there we've cited yet another provision from your statute that kind of gave us a hint. Under this section, 203.404A5, the agency may discipline a licensed midwife, refuse to renew the midwife's license, or refuse to issue a license if the person engages in unprofessional or dishonorable, and here's the part that I think is very on point, conduct that may reasonably be determined to deceive or defraud the public. So if the legislature thought we should be able to discipline somebody for that, that's probably a clue that we might want to consider denying a license if someone has a criminal history of fraud type behavior. So the next 2 categories are the categories that have to do with drugs and illegal substances. And we talked about these for a long time as well. Generally, I'll summarize these this way. The first category has to do with drug dealers, and then the second category has to do with drug users. So the first category is someone who has convictions for things like possession with intent to deliver, possession with intent to distribute, or actually delivery or distribution or manufacturing of illegal drugs. The thought process there was that the occupation presents an opportunity for someone who could administer illegal drugs to their clients. It also, because of the contact in a private setting, sometimes a one-on-one type of contact, there is also a potential for perhaps trying to loop someone else into acting, you know, as a drug dealer or securing drugs for you. So that was kind of the thought process there. And then about on the crimes involving being under the influence of alcohol or drugs, what we talked about there is that, you know, the work that you do is very immediate and it's very intimate. You're having contact with somebody during prenatal, during actual birth, and in the postpartum period. If you are a person who may potentially have alcohol or drugs in your system while you're doing something of that nature, you can bring harm to your clients or to the baby just by virtue of being, messed up on drugs or alcohol. So that was the thought process there. And then the final category this is a new one on me. I have never seen this category in all of the other criminal conviction guidelines that we've done. We've never had anything like this, but we did talk about it for quite a bit. Crimes involving the sale, distribution, or disposal of human organs or tissue. I can tell you we've never seen any such crime in any of the criminal histories that we've looked at, but it may just be that we weren't looking at, people with a potential for doing this kind of stuff. But we did talk about how, there are criminal provisions that make it illegal to sell certain tissues or to dispose of things in a certain way. And so we wanted to put that in front of you, and, if you feel like that is a legitimate, it might be 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000 applicants, but if it's there, is that something that you would want to deny somebody a license for? That is everything that I wanted to touch on in the guidelines. Again, I just wanted to mention these were developed with a lot of input from the board members who served on the enforcement work, or continue to serve, and we really appreciate all of their help. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this or the process or anything. Ultimately, I'm asking that you recommend these guidelines for the commission's approval.
I was hoping we could have a little bit of a discussion about 2 of the
Okay.
sections on here. One is the...
Lori?
Yes, do I have to
Introduce
say my
yourself.
name?
You do.
Kremgen. The first one is the crimes involving the possession of manufacture or distribution of illegal drugs. And so, I'm assuming you're probably talking about, illegal drugs, but we also deal with prescription drugs. And it kind of brings up the challenge of some midwives who are in some areas of the state that don't have supportive medical backup, where they could get standing orders or a doctor's support in obtaining emergency drugs legally. I don't know of any case where any midwife has ever been convicted of something like that, but certainly hypothetically the possibility exists. And so, and you also said that, these are just guidelines and all of that.
Right.
So it just brings up the issue to me about legalizing emergency medications for midwives, and the challenges with stating something like this in a guideline. So I don't know if anybody else has any thought about that.
Janet Dermeyer. I also would like to see if we can, with the legislative session starting next year, if that could be an avenue. I don't know which department we would actually work with to accomplish this, but to make some of those drugs that, it's a common practice among midwives to use certain drugs to, for instance, handle a postpartum hemorrhage. But again, like Lori was saying, there are some areas of the state.
Janet?
Yes?
I'm sorry. Mary Winston, I'm going to have to interrupt just because we're moving off script, so to speak, of what is noticed in the agenda. We would love to have that conversation. And we are aware that there are some issues in different parts of the state and so forth and so on. But we have to stick to the agenda. If we want to bring that up in the next meeting specifically, let's make it an item. So
Okay.
we
Well,
won't
she's
have our
asking us
hands
to
slapped.
approve these to be sent on, so how is this discussion off that?
Are we talking about, well, when we get into the legislative session and talking about who we should talk to effectuate some sort of change, let's talk about that later. But if you just want to know what type of drugs we're talking about, right? And I can't read Christina's mind to know what her answer is gonna be, but let's kind of just rein it in just a little bit. But make a note, because if we want to bring this up next meeting, let's kind of notice it so we can have a real discussion.
Okay,
And
so if I could just clarify real quick and real
Okay.
simple, so then, when we're talking about illegal drugs, are we talking about
Yeah,
street
once.
drugs?
Yes.
Okay, a placental disposal, is that gonna be an issue with the other one? As far as the processing and handling and discarding of organs? Because some people consider that an organ. Cause that would be an important thing to
Right.
add in there to clarify. that.
Well, remember that in this context, any act that we're talking about, there has to have been a conviction attached to it, or a deferred adjudication, which is another criminal disposition. Just simply the act of doing something is not going to make these guidelines even apply to you yet. You have to have been convicted of something. So if there is a crime that could have been committed associated with, what did you say, placenta?
Well, discarding the placentas, there is.
So if there is a crime associated with that, and if someone were convicted of that crime, then that could, potentially loop them in under this last category in this draft. I don't know. We found, when we researched this, we found a provision in the Texas law. It's in the Texas Penal Code under the Crimes Against Persons category that was a prohibition on the purchase and sale of human organs. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going by memory here, but I'm pretty sure I read some analysis that said placenta wasn't included in that. Or maybe it was even included in the statute. Organ,
I mean, we're talking about, the language here is may, not will. So this is discretionary for any of these cases. I mean, even if a heinous crime was committed, it's still may. The wording is may, not
Right.
will. So it's going to be, I think it would be very difficult to cut aside every last, if there was somebody that was convicted of possession of an illegal drug, and that illegal drug was the possession of misoprostol, because they don't have a prescription for misoprostol, that I think that would be, that's something that would be taken into consideration.
Right,
But
okay.
but to cutting all those out, whereas the same thing that was somebody was in possession of ketamine, there's two very, those are two very different, but legally they're going to fall under this kind of the same. So it just seems that splitting hairs is you get down to splitting very fine hairs, and the way that you've got this covered, or the way that we're able to work with that, is that this is may language
Right.
instead of will
Right.
language. So
and if you feel generally bad about any of these categories, it can be removed. And it may not ever make a difference, because we may not ever see a person with that kind of a conviction to even be worried about it. But just, the guidelines are our place to put up a flag and say, if someone has a conviction for this thing, we want the agency to be able to look at them and evaluate their entire criminal history and make a judgment call. So, yes, ma'am.
Helen Nelson. There is a midwife in Sugar Creek, Ohio, who spent quite a bit of time in jail for administering Pitocin during a hemorrhage and refusing to give the court the source of the Pitocin.
So she was convicted
She was
of
an
that.
Amish midwife. She had mothers and babies camped outside the jail. They finally let her out.
Yeah.
So that's an example. If you see a person with a conviction for doing that, is that a person that you would want to possibly deny the license to?
No, not
But
for,
would
not
we
for what
decide
Helen's
that, or would
talking
y'all
about.
decide that?
Well, we
just
would
looking at it?
we would decide that.
In those cases, though, is that something you could bring before the board? I mean,
No.
It's so rare, and it's probably not even gonna happen with people here, but maybe, like, as the case Helen described.
It is something where we would seek, if we didn't know the significance of the drug, for example, it is something where we could seek expert analysis
Uh-huh.
from one of you individually
Uh-huh.
as an expert witness for us, or from Yvonne,
Uh-huh.
or someone who's on our staff who has that knowledge. But to bring the cases in front of the board, that's not going to be part of our process.
Okay.
I don't
Okay,
have any
but-
overt concerns about it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have a public conversation about it a little bit, because I know as a midwife myself, if I hear things as cut and dried as that, I would immediately go to the questions that we had as far as what does that
Right.
mean? Does that mean we can no longer dispose of placentas, or what kind of drugs are we considering illegal? But we're basically talking about illegal
Yeah.
street drugs. And
When this category, talking about the very last category, the human organs or tissue, when it came up in the advisory board work groups discussions, my notes reflect that there was concern about some criminal cases involving the selling of cord blood and selling of medical waste in a way that's prohibited by law. And I don't know the significance of that, but there are provisions in the federal law, and it's at least partially related to stem cells derived from umbilical cord blood. So I don't know if that adds any value to the discussion for you or not. I don't know what all those words mean, but
Victoria Munhart.
Yes.
So when we're talking about the stem cell collection, there are a lot of companies out there who provide the service that you can collect stem cells, and they provide this kit that you can collect stem cells with. So the idea is that you collect those stem cells, you put it in a kit, and you ship it off to the company. So, you know, if somebody's out there selling the stem cells that they've collected, that means they probably used the kit and then just did something different with it. So if that helps clarify for you.
From that, it would be illegal.
Yeah, if we profited, if somebody took that and went, ooh, look, stem cells, I'll sell them, you know.
Yeah.
That would be an illegal thing to do.
Okay. So if someone did that crime and were convicted of it,
Mhm.
would you think that person should have a license denied or potentially denied?
Yeah, I think it's a potential. Yes, that would be, but I'd like to, I'd like to look into it.
You would
and
want to
find out
know the whole
yeah, I wanna know the whole
circumstances, which
story.
is where the discretionary review comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
So there would be discretionary review if, say, you know, and I think the concern, I think is when I share with my my fellow board members here is, you know, if a midwife were convicted of using Pitocin in a life-saving manner, and then went to renew her license, you know, then she would, if she was going to be denied for that use, I think that would be a problem. You know, so hopefully we can open up that conversation in another meeting where we
Right.
can perhaps push some real difference in the laws about those medications that
Right.
are life-saving. So
Okay.
that's something I would ask
Yeah,
I would ask the commission to take into an account if you were to receive information about a midwife who is using medications that save lives illegally, because we, you know, no matter how hard we've tried, we can't get permission without physician oversight to use those meds.
Okay. So, right, that type of analysis would be part of the case-by-case analysis. It would be part of the information, first of all, that the investigator would develop when looking into the background of this conviction.
Yeah.
And then that would be part of the analysis that these lawyers ultimately would need to do, and, you know, we would have to.
But again, I think the concern is if an investigator investigates that particular drug and finds out that we're not supposed to be administering it without a
Right.
prescription, and you've got a midwife that is in an area she cannot get it, but she administered a life-saving drug and actually administered it appropriately, she could have been convicted of using a prescription drug illegally. At that point, you get a complaint, and your investigator, who is he gonna ask for input in that? Because if he asked the input from a medical source, they would go, yes, the midwife broke the law. And if you're saying y'all would make that determination, the indetermination on that, if you're going by that counsel instead of midwives who are out in the field who are actually practicing and you know, we desperately would like to have that backup, but can't always get it, then I think our concern is, would you be asking us? Would you be asking the appropriate input from the appropriate source in a case like that? That's the concern.
Okay.
Just real briefly, I think it would help if we just simply define what illegal drugs are and not the other intent, but make sure they know they're street drugs, if that's
How-
what the intent is there.
How
I
would
think
you?
that's,
Well, because then
yeah,
you
I
got
think we can do
Oxycontin
that
and
because,
stuff.
one of the largest problems with drugs, growing drug problems in the nation is not street drugs, it's
Prescription drugs
used
being
inappropriately.
yeah.
So it's hard to
Well-
draw that distinction.
Well, what are we talking about, it being a crime here? Are we talking about all the drugs that we prescribe being illegal? Or are we talking about street drugs here? I'm not sure I understand what is the intent then of this. And since it's so many questions, it would help if it is defined, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think the intent is that if they're illegal street drugs or recreational drugs being grossly misappropriated.
Right.
That's the
Exactly.
intent.
We're
of
talking
it.
about-
But I don't want us to get a loophole where it can become, I didn't have a prescription for it. I did save this woman's life because I stopped the hemorrhage.
But we're not, I guess that's what I'm saying. Are we talking about the Pitocin and someone using
Yes.
Pitocin? Or are we, in this case, are we talking about illegal street drugs?
But that would be illegal. It would be, Pitocin would be an illegal drug for me.
Just like OxyContin would be if you were giving it to someone, selling it to someone without a
Without a
prescription.
license or a prescription.
Understood. That's why I'm saying, should you define the intent of this one as being cocaine or whatever else you're talking about?
For instance, could we add something in there about a life-saving, without, the circumstances that you would administer a drug?
Christina,
think it's- we
Mary
don't-
Winston again, is this something that that was discussed in the work group?
This was, yeah, this was
Oh, it was.
discussed at the work group quite a bit.
And we didn't
And-
come up with,
I mean, ultimately, we need the guidelines to be just that. We need them to be guidelines, and we need them to be general, and we need them to be applied with the discretion that we have applied them in every other industry that we have done this with. I can tell you that this question about the midwife's ability to get the medical support for the administration of certain medication, that's kind of a big question mark that the agency is going to need to address in a bigger forum beyond just the discussion of this. And it's not going to be my call or my prosecutor's call. It's going to be a policy decision about, what is the position the agency wants to take about that practice that's going to be informed by a whole lot of people.
I think I
so-
would feel just a whole lot better about it if I knew that if that were to arise, one of the expert witnesses that you would seek out would be a midwife.
Okay.
If you can, describe the short process, a short description of the appeal process if somebody is denied because of one of these rules. How would does that appeal process come back? Where does that appeal process come back to? And if there is an appeal process, does it come back to where there would be an inclusion of midwives in that appeal process?
If we seek to deny someone a license or to revoke a license that they already have, we issue them a formal notice to that effect, and then the person has the opportunity to request a hearing. The hearing is held in front of the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and at that point, we would put on our case, the midwife applicant would put on her case, and any other witnesses that she wants or he wants to present or that we want to present. And then ultimately, out of the State Office of Administrative Hearing comes a proposed decision. And then that comes in front of our commission, our 7-member body that governs the agency, for a final decision. And even after the commission makes a final decision, the case is still, the person is still able to appeal that further to district court to seek judicial review of the agency's decision in district court. So there are many opportunities along the way, including, by the way, with participating in the investigation process at the front end to determine, to affect the outcome of the situation. I don't want to give you false a false sense of security that the situation you're concerned about, that may not ever come up. I mean, hopefully we will never have an applicant who has a conviction for that. But if an applicant does have a conviction for that, and this category is in these guidelines, it may raise a flag, and we may seek to deny the person's license on that basis. If that scenario is enough to make you not want to look at drug convictions at all, then let's take it out of the guidelines.
Yeah, I personally, Lori Fremgen, I feel satisfied that there are all these kind of provisions in place, and that you look at it on an individual basis and appeals process and all
Right.
of that. So if that does come up, you know,
Right.
it's not the end for
Right.
someone.
And I can tell you also that, you know, often we will see a crime. Again, I don't want to give false hope by saying this, but we will see a crime and it's a single conviction that a person has had sometime in the past, and it's a conviction that falls into one of these guidelines. But because of all of the other circumstances of their life that have happened since that conviction, we're still going to clear the license applicant anyway. So again, this is not an automatic, you've got the conviction, you're out of here type of thing.
It's worth raising an unnecessary red flag 1 in 100 to catch a couple of meth cookers. Delivery babies.
Right. Yeah, and we talked about that too, that it's probably not very likely we'll ever see these kind of folks in the midwifery practice anyway, but,
And
you know.
you described that there is an avenue for enlisting the opinion of a
Yes.
peer.
Yes, during our investigation, and we've actually been drafting procedures for the use of expert witnesses during the investigation. That is part of what we can do.
Okay.
And this advisory board, this is our first pool of potential experts, of course, that we would be drawing on. So
The crimes that you have listed here are very similar to the other crimes for other licenses.
they are, with
Except
the
for the
exception
ones
of
that
the
were
human
specific.
organs and tissue. We've never seen that one before.
So the drug thing is on the other one.
It is
And-
in some of them.
Okay.
It is not in all of them. I can say crimes against the person and the sex crimes and crimes against children, those are pretty consistent across programs. But the drug offenses are not in all of our programs.
And I just want to make sure I understand, this is not only for people applying for a license, but if you have a license and you're practicing and commit one of these crimes, they can be revoked at any time.
If you are convicted of it, yes. The next time you apply for a renewal of your license, your criminal history is run again at that point. And so if we see a new conviction.
They have a license, say, for a year, or 2 years, or 3, and they have a crime that they're convicted of in 6 months, what happens then?
Then typically, we're not even going to know about that until the next time they renew.
Gotcha.
Unless it gets reported to us. You know, we have folks in some of the industries who are really watching each other and who will send us a complaint from time to time and say, hey, you need to go look at Bob Rennick because he got a new conviction for whatever. And then at that point, we can open the case and proceed to possibly revoke at that time.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion on the criminal conviction guidelines?
Do we need to make a motion to approve it?
If we want to approve it, would someone like to make a motion to approve the criminal conviction guidelines to pass that on to the commission?
I'll make a motion that we accept the criminal guidelines.
I'll second.
All those in favor of putting these forward?
Aye.
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 All opposed? And they pass.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? George Ferry again. Couple things. This might be a good time to take a break, and I'd like to give you an update on the air conditioning. It ain't working, and it ain't gonna be working apparently. Something happened during the storm, I guess, and the whole building's warming up, so.
Oh, wow.
So,
We're,
Is that why we're all sleepy?
yeah. I could explain it, yes. One of our employees was trying to bring some fans in, one of which apparently wasn't doing well, so. But we're gonna try and get more fans in here if we can, at least get the air moving. But anyway, you might wanna take a break, I think.
Okay,
so.
let us take a quick 5-minute break so we can get out of here before it gets any warmer. So, yes, we'll begin again in 5 minutes.
Hey, Vicki.
Beth, appreciate it.
No.
First, we're taking that.
No.
Second, good. But no. We're doing it.
We're gavelled back in, folks. Moving on to discussion item G, update on work group assignments. And is that separate or in there together with integrative resuscitation in the newborn?
Clarification on this agenda item.
Yes.
It says update on work group assignments, but the word that is important here is going to be discussion.
Okay.
Because it's literally not assigned to a work group. This
Okay.
was an item that was requested by one of your members, one of our members.
Okay.
And so we would like to offer that opportunity to have that discussion. But it's just discussion, no decision today.
Okay.
Something that obviously Lori wanted to be, just brought before you guys as a board.
Okay.
Madam Chair, George Sherry again. Maybe you can make one decision, and that is which work group to assign it to. It says the item says assigned to medical standards. I think that means standards of care work group or the education work group. So before y'all get off that.
I think that's an education item.
This issue would be a change in the rules.
Okay.
So I think it'd probably have to go to standard of care.
Well, so it would probably really be appropriate then to have a work group discussion on this before you bring it back to the entire board. So.
And I think it would fall under the education portion of the rules.
Not necessarily because it's a licensing issue, and it's about the requirements that that we need to fulfill in order to get a license, so it's a licensing, I guess maybe not a standard of care, I think it's a licensing.
Okay, but that would go under
thing.
the education portion of the.
No, it would go in the licensing.
In licensing specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We okay with that?
No.
No?
No.
What, well,
Education. Because it's a course.
Yeah.
because it's a
It's
course?
a course, and go education.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's hear it out, maybe, first.
Yeah, can we talk about it first? Okay. All right, Lori Fremgen. As many of you guys know, it's required that we take neonatal resuscitation, or NRP, every 2 years in order to meet our licensing requirements.
Yep.
It's all the fans.
You're gonna have to
Does
speak
this
in the
help?
microphone, lady.
Does that help? Hello? Okay.
Okay, get close
It's
to
the
it.
fans.
The fans.
You're going to get closer or pull the microphone up to your mouth.
Wow,
take it out of
okay,
the-
lots of feedback, everyone.
It'll come out of the thing.
Okay.
You're used to feedback.
Yes, apparently. So, as you all know, neonatal resuscitation is one of the requirements for our license. And neonatal resuscitation includes a component that midwives have been able to kind of sidestep up until now, which includes learning how to intubate the baby and medications to use outside of the home. Both of those things which are beyond the scope of midwifery practice. And so Karen Strange, who has been teaching neonatal resuscitation for 18 years, I believe, and if any of you have ever taken her class, it's extremely thorough, and she pulls in not only information from NRP, which is the American standard, but also European standards, as well as other kinds of education regarding the resuscitation of the newborn baby. And in January, NRP is about to change to include those two components, and so her class would not include those components. And her class is also geared towards out-of-hospital birth, which is specific.
In January, that will become mandatory.
In January, that
Well,
becomes
complete.
mandatory for NRP.
Whether we need it or not.
Right.
We can do it.
So she came up with this program and would like for us to be actually the first state in the country to approve this as a neonatal resuscitation part of licensing. And also once the first state approves it, she believes the NARM will follow very quickly. So it's new. It's a new program, but I think it's an excellent program. I've been taking her class for years, and so I just wanted to bring that forward.
Victoria?
And I don't know how much we want to do about general, because it sounds like this will go to one of the subcommittees, but I do have some general questions that maybe will help in looking at addressing this with the subcommittee. So if I have these general questions, maybe that helps guide the subcommittee around those discussions. First question would be, why not just do the NRP and include the other pieces around that? I mean, what is so different between NRP? I mean, I guess I'm a little bit confused about why not do the NRP and include other portions of instruction outside of the NRP. And if the NRP standard is going to be to not to remove those two pieces that you're wanting to remove, and that's going to happen in January, maybe we wait till January before. And then the third question is this going to create a monopoly of education? I mean, and I hate the idea, the thought of that, but if there's only one person that is offering this specific course for midwives, is there some sort of, does that create some sort of, is there a danger in that? Or and is that legally going to be an issue?
There's no reason why we can't have both approved.
Yeah, I don't think that it's being offered, Dr. Nix, as a replacement
Yeah.
As much as it
It's an
is
addition.
an
Okay.
option, like now,
Mhm.
it's a lot more appropriated to midwives and out-of-hospital use and what we are able to do and capable of doing. And so her NRP takes, what, 3 hours to take that course? This course that she offers is like a 6 or 7 hour course. It's so much
Okay.
more thorough. You're getting so much more than you get in NRP, quite frankly. And it, again, it's more applicable to out of hospital. So we're not talking about replacing it. We're talking about giving it as an option.
And Mary Winston here, and this would go to Education and Examinations Work Group, and that's Victoria Meinhardt, Chair, Ms. Nelson, Dr. Guillory, and Ms. Hart.
Yeah.
So, you had some very specific questions. I think that they have heard those, and it's going to be discussed more. And you can all give, we can have input in this, but it's going to go to your group.
Well, I mean, honestly, I like the idea that there's a choice. NRP is great, and, having just been through the process of actually taking all 9 sections of NRP and going through it a couple of times now, I mean, yeah, there's 4 sections of NRP that are pointless to
Okay.
what I do in my work. And I've taken Ms. Strange's class, and it's very inclusive. It really, really discusses the physiological process of a baby, transitioning from intrauterine to extrauterine life, and all the psychology around it. So it's an excellent class. It really, really is. So I think that as an alternative, it would be appropriate, because I know she covers the NRP in general. Like the first time I ever took her class, it was NRP plus.
Okay, and so that, and not, like I said, I want to generate the full discussion here. I would like to bring these questions forward so that those are something that's considered by the work group.
Yeah.
And as information comes back to this advisory board, I think it would be nice to have a clear cut. Here's what one has. Here's what the other has.
Sure.
Here's the differences between the two, so that it gives us an easy comparison of what's covered in both different courses.
And thank you, Dr. Nix. That will
Yeah,
help
thank you.
for those of us who aren't as familiar, to give direction to the work group, to give us guidance for a side-by-side comparison or what have you, and to take into consideration TDLR's format and Ray's process as director, and you're the chair of that committee. So,
And can I add one more thing, that it's not in replace of NRP, it's another option. Just like we have with CPR, we have a couple of options.
And quite
So that,
frankly, Dr.
but it
Nix-
serves as a replacement for it, and
Well-
you do it one instead of. I mean,
Yeah.
that's mincing words a little
Yeah,
bit there.
but-
You can do one instead of the other.
Right.
That replaces the other one.
I
you
see what
made
you're
the
saying,
you made
yeah.
the comment about a monopoly. Right now, NRP is a monopoly.
It is.
'Cause it's the only option.
one thing.
That's true.
A lot of different
So would anyone like to
The whole
move that
thing,
we
Yeah.
assign evaluation of that program to the education work group?
Okay.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, I guess I'm.
Oh, did
do
you
we
make
need-
the movement?
I have
No.
not made a motion yet.
I'll let you make the movement.
Do we need to? I think we need to.
Do we need to do that,
Have a motion
Mary?
to send that to.
you
work
can
group.
assign it. You can just
Okay.
assign it.
Then I will choose to assign that to the education work group for evaluation and to bring back for the full board for us to talk about in a subsequent meeting. All right, moving forward. Update from work groups and possible recommendation. We've seen some of the work product from the enforcement work group. Who else do we have talking about that?
Charlotte Melder again with enforcement. Sometimes at this section, the board tells the rest of the board what happened at the work group, but I will tell you what we did at the last work group meeting was the criminal conviction guidelines. We discussed that. What's coming up that we will be discussing is the penalty matrix, but that's going to be a little bit later. There was one other thing, and I forgot what it was. What was it? Oh, yes. In the next couple of months, we are going to be asking for a training of our staff of like a day in the life of a midwife. And so we kind of...
That's awesome.
Right.
Are you tonight in the life?
Just giving you an example. We're asking each of the industries of the programs that are coming over to come and kind of teach us about their industry. It's not a how is this enforced, it's not how it's regulated, it's what do you do as your profession? We want to be educated. So in the next couple of months, we'll be asking you to come over and do that training. After that, we'll get working on the enforcement plan, the penalty matrix.
You might consider a week in the life of a midwife to be more complete there. Just
Well, it's just an overview for us.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm
it's
looking
really
forward to it.
smart.
So. And that's going to be everybody who touches these cases, not just the prosecutor. So. Any questions?
I'm curious how that's unfolding. How are you doing that? I mean,
Actually, Chris has been the one who has been setting up these with the people to come over and train. And I know we have one tomorrow, but Chris can come and talk about that. I'll step aside.
I'm curious.
Hi, Chris Rossi, Research and Analytics Specialist. So what we're really asking, we're not wanting anything formal as a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that. What we'll do is ask the 3 work group members for the enforcement work group for volunteers to come and just, not hands-on, a day in a midwife or anything like that, but, what kind of, quite all right.
Why
not? What we would prefer is, just kind of an overview. How do you interact with your patients or clients? What kind of documents do you create? What do you maintain? The settings in which you would interact with those patients or clients, whether it be home birthing centers, whatever it may be. And so all 3 of you can attend. We would definitely prefer if you did it in person. However, if situations arise where you cannot, we can set up a conference call for you to perform that training. I will be sending out an email for that within the next couple of months. We have one tomorrow actually for the orthotists and prosthetists. And so after we are able to get your criminal conviction guidelines approved and moved through the commission, published on our website, that will be our next step prior to doing the enforcement plan, which is the penalty matrix.
Is this something that's occurring with other groups that are moving over? Is this something that's novel?
It's something that we're adopting for these DSHS programs, just because they are unique to the rest of the occupations that TDLR regulates. So we were wanting to get just a better feel of, this licensee base and how y'all actually interact and work with the public.
What work group is doing this?
This is the enforcement work group.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, it would be you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the work group?
Yeah. Smart.
That's a wonderful idea, but I don't know if one day is going to be enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it all depends on how, I guess y'all will have a better idea of where they should come visit,
And that's the other thing. This isn't going to be
going to a birth or going to a clinic or going to your.
I think Charlotte wants to come to a birth.
She is. Absolutely. This is something we will have here. We're not going to go on site. Again, no hands-on training necessary. Just kind of an introduction. As Mary has said before, this is, it's going to be a process, absolutely. These programs are unique and they're much different. So, this is the first step in that process that we really want to, kind of introduce ourselves to it. And absolutely, I'll call you on that.
I'm on that committee, so
You are, absolutely. And again, I'll be sending out that email here within the next couple of months. So just kind of keep an eye out for that if you're on the enforcement work group. And yeah.
Great. I have a
This is Lori Fremgen. I have a general question about these work groups. We've only had one meet so far, and so I'm curious about the intention of the timing of the other three and all of that.
Mary Winston, I'll take a little bit of it and someone can piggyback after that. Standard of care. We purposely waited with that work group. We had to begin the process of getting you guys here, which will be complete beginning of October. We, our general counsel's office lined up our rules to be more effective so we can provide more information, our customer service, so forth and so on, for who calls in or emails. We've done that step by step. Once you guys come over here, officially, October 1, October 3rd, which is a Monday, we will begin that process.
Okay.
Enforcement work group, we have had work that needs to be done before we can move on with other things. And penalty matrix and criminal conviction guidelines, those are cornerstones, and we can flow from there. Education and examination, I see the director has stepped to the plate.
Ray Pizarro. I would just, to answer your question, I would just say we'll initiate that meet, my team, so that we'll be contacting you, the folks who are involved in the education work group, and we are going to sit down, roll up our sleeves, and we're going to talk about one topic at a time. I think the first one that would be beneficial to all of us before October 3rd would be, as I said earlier, the content of the JP exam. We just need to make sure that we've changed up some of that terminology and go through the item bank so that each strategy, when they deliver those exams starting October 3rd, it'll reflect the right information. So that kind of thing. And then as we move forward, when we change rules or we make other changes to whatever we're going to do in the future, we can update those JP item exams. We'll bring in some of the work group folks in that way. And then, of course, the situation with the course that we were just talking about recently here, we can have that conversation on with that work group on where we move forward. And then that group can deliver that information. The chair will deliver the information to the board at the next meet. So that's kind of how we will do it. Which, of course, we're going to try to do this before October 3rd, specifically the JP one, because we want to have that switch ready to turn it on once that happens. Okay?
May I ask a logistical?
Well, we got to wait for the train. Remember, the train is still in San Antonio.
Yeah.
We can't catch it until it gets here. And there's nothing we can do. And it seems like it's this, we just can start, but we really don't have any authorization.
I have a question regarding just a simple logistical scheduling. As these work groups are scheduled, do we have some power over what day these work groups are scheduled on?
Absolutely.
That is
absolutely.
good.
We're going to we're going to get with the chair of the work group. We'll probably send out an email to everybody. He goes, hey, we want to meet on this day. What do you guys think? We'll get some feedback. How about this day? We're going to obviously work with everyone. We want it, but we need to start doing it here pretty soon because it's not just this work group. We have other work groups with the other industries that's coming over from DSHS.
Okay, thank you.
And a point of clarification to George Sherry, these don't have to be in person necessarily. We can do these by phone, whatever the case may be, so that you don't have to travel to Austin to have these. These are.
I live here. It's more about my job.
Thanks, George. No, that's exactly right. Most of the time when we do these work groups, it's via the phone. We do a webinar. Rarely we would have to actually get together because we're making decisions on, and some of the things we're going to do, especially for example the JP, we're going to send out pre-information to everyone, so we come to the table at working. We have some sort of progress already done. We don't want to just start attacking it right then and there. So we will reach out to you via email to those folks, and we'll say this is what we need to do. Who's going to do what part? Let's come back and meet together and see where we're at. That kind of thing. So it'll be behind the scene works, and then we'll get together and talk about it. Okay.
George Sherry, just one more point of clarification. Most of these is pretty obvious which division is going to be coordinating these, but Just so you know, the standards of care work group will be compliance. So someone from compliance, I bet Yvonne, will be contacting the members of that work group to schedule a meeting. And like Mary said, that's not the most urgent one right now, but we are going to take that up hopefully before the next, at least start the discussion before the next advisory board meeting. So.
Great. Which group are you talking about?
Standards of care work group.
Okay. Okay.
We appreciate that clarification because there was some confusion, because we thought we were going to be working on those so that we would have that developed, and come October the 3rd, we had hit the ground running, and the last 2 meetings have been canceled, and then it's on the agenda
Yeah.
to discuss these work groups, and we're going. Yeah.
Well, these
Did you
are-
meet with your work group? Did you meet with So there was a lot of confusion about that.
And you'll probably see these on all the agendas because they're there to, we can't talk about it if it's not on the agenda. So we're going to put them on the
Right.
agenda in case the meetings do take place, and we are able to discuss what comes out of the meetings.
Okay. That makes sense.
And Mary again, and though less than optimal circumstances in the transition, we've cobbled it along as best we could. I think we've made a pretty good try at it. But we're still ahead of the game. You didn't come over day 1 to where all of this had to be done after that point. These pieces that are happening now, enforcement, jurisprudence with education, all these things, we're really on target and ahead of the target. TDLR has, I don't want to say taken over, but been blessed with many other programs in the past, and we didn't have that time frame to work with. So we have a little bit of wiggle room before the train pulls into the station, as Ray said. We were operating at a best case scenario, really at a worst case scenario. So we had a couple of meetings that, we didn't have quorum, it didn't happen. We're here now, we're moving forward, and we're still on target. So we've kind of built in a little wiggle room, and we've had to use it a little bit, but we're really ready to move forward now. We're on target. Don't worry, Jan.
I think we're in prodromal labor.
No, we're getting closer.
Yeah.
We're active
Getting
now.
closer. Okay.
We moved to early labor, I think.
Are we in early labor?
I think we're
Okay.
about 36
Well, to
weeks
be
gestation.
specific, we have 46 days, 15 hours, 47 minutes, and 50 seconds. So.
It's real early labor.
Wow, whoa.
If you all
Ballpark.
haven't looked at the website, I'm sorry, you don't have that part, I'm sorry. We have a countdown. We have a countdown to the second.
Y'all are excited.
When you all are coming over.
You're
So
committed.
that is why everyone's like 46 days, 15 hours, 47 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. So, yeah, it's counting down. It's going until you get here, and then I don't know what it's going to turn into. But, yeah, we're very excited.
Okay, do we have any recommendations for agenda items for the next board meeting?
Madam Chair, most of the things you see on this agenda will be on the next agenda. And certainly
Sure.
the staff reports and the updates from the work groups. So those items will be, and any other items y'all
And
believe.
does the board have any other items they would specifically like to request be included next time? Any other issues from the board that they would like to see agenda items specifically include?
Well, we have time to add things as.
Sure, of course.
Right.
But now is one of those times, so if we wanted to, if you got anything on the tip of your tongue to fire off, they
Nope.
will be on there.
Agree.
Okay, nothing at this time, but we'll see if there's anything else that comes up.
Absolutely.
And discussion of date, time, and location of the next board meeting.
Okay, so we're looking at, how does January 18th, 2017, sounds like a long time in the future, but how does that sound for your next meeting at the same time in the afternoon? You like the afternoon time frame? Or?
Sure, that's.
Yes.
18th.
What day of the week is that?
Wednesday.
That's when. You don't have a never on
This, this amount of time gives the work groups time to meet and have discussions so that you actually have something to report at the next advisory board meeting, so.
We've had to cancel the last 2 meetings. If we schedule this date, is this gonna be the date that we can?
We actually have meat to chew on at this point. and we
Uh-huh.
will have more meat to chew on. This gives, we don't have to put the agenda item again for NRP because it's going to be in our work group for education and examination. We have jurisprudence work that's going to have to occur.
Yeah.
We'll have that with E&E. So we talk about December. Those meetings are always iffy.
Mhm.
It's not a
Not a good time.
midwife thing. It's just, it's iffy.
It's holidays and family things.
Yeah, November, you have the first couple of weeks and then no one's available, they're traveling. So October is when, it's on. So that'll give us time. Now, you will have to show up at least via telephone for these work group meetings.
Sure.
But you can handle that without having to get to Austin, those of you who don't live here. So that is work that has to be done. January, you can actually come back to Austin and get with that work. So
Okay.
not anticipating, also, you're formally here in January. I'm not anticipating, you won't have to go to a meeting in one place and stay over and
Yeah.
come to, so I'm thinking that's a good time, particularly considering the holidays weren't right in there. I would say move it up, but December is just never a good time.
And air conditioning shouldn't be a problem in January either. So-
That's right.
So, and that meeting, we don't anticipate any issues here because we're off and running, and I can tell by Director Ray's face, he's on this. But it's going to be on y'all, There will be work group meetings that have to occur via phone or what have
My
you.
only question is that's a short week already with it's a holiday week.
Okay.
And it's a
Give
short
us-
week. And I'm selfish because it's the first week of my semester.
No. Do we have another date?
Hold the presses.
No, the 16th is not.
What about
Yeah.
16th is a holiday.
Hold your meeting the week before or the week after. That would, for the Wednesday, it would make it the 11th of January or the 25th.
Good with either of those? Either of those are better than the 18th for me, just because of the shortened week and the.
This is so far in advance that it doesn't matter. Whatever y'all,
Yeah,
what do you?
either one is fine.
Yeah, pick one.
Okay, let's hit the 11th then.
11th, okay.
We'll see if we can get iced out.
Afternoon, 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock works.
25th's better for Brenda.
25th is better for me
Yeah.
because.
Then let's hit the 25th.
Because of due
25th
dates.
is fine.
25th is fine.
25th, it is.
25th is better for
For those of you who have written the date and scratched it out 4 or 5 times. It's 1
Great.
o'clock.
And we don't have another meeting
So it's
until
on the 11th?
Is that correct?
Work group
Not-
meetings will be
yes.
scheduled,
Well, right.
Work
but those
group
are
Board
generally
meeting.
done remotely, but our next board meeting will then be tentatively scheduled for the 25th of January 2017 at 1 p.m.
1 o'clock, okay, great. That's great.
You're not here during this meeting, you have no idea.
Because I keep getting.
All right, and that concludes our agenda. And,
I may have one topic.
oh yes,
If a member is not, so is there another way to send this out to members of the board to make sure that this date is final? If someone's not here, it may not be evident to them that that date is been scheduled. And that's, I feel like that might have been what I've experienced before, is that I didn't know for sure when those meetings were until
There's only one member absent.
within a few weeks before, and then it was a little bit too late to try to
can we
arrange
get
that.
an email
so.
to the board members with the confirmation? Okay,
We'll make sure that happens.
okay, in the short term and not 2 weeks before,
No,
okay.
it's in the long term, but we'll make sure that it happens.
There'll be a reminder closer to time
Great.
too, so, okay,
Perfect.
thank you, I appreciate that, 'cause
Yeah.
Yep, we'll have slept since then.
Little.
All right, thank you for your patience and your attendance, this concludes our meeting, this board meeting is adjourned.